Broken glass reflecting eternity. Eva-Maria Admiral's life. A story in 11 acts. I am Eva-Maria Admiral. I can't do this. I can't introduce myself. It's not my job. I am Eva-Maria Admiral. I have been an actress for 30 years. I attended the National Drama School in Vienna, the Marx Reinhardt Seminar, and immediately after my studies I worked in the Burgtheater, which is the biggest German-speaking theater. I married an actor, Eric Verlin, and before that I have also studied literature in Paris, and now I live in Salzburg. There were two reasons for me going to a border school when I was 9. First, at that time it was completely normal when you belonged to a specific social class. And I think it was important to my parents. I wasn't at home. They didn't want me with them. They wanted it that way. I think that as a child you feel abandoned when you have nobody you can speak to. I also experienced discipline and severe sanctions. And the most difficult when you are not allowed to talk is when the other 30 pupils are not allowed to speak to you either. Once in a while I would chat in the dormitory. I must have been 10 or 11 when one evening a nun came in and she said to me, "Take up your bed and go." I knew it was a verse from the Bible, so I didn't think it could bring about something really bad. She said, "Take up your bed and go." So I took my sheet and my pillow, and the nun walked before me and went down to the basement where the study was. It was dark, and she showed me the floor and said, "Now you sleep here, so you won't chat anymore." Then she closed the door, and it was dark, and I lay there. At the time, the nun represented God to me, and during 3 years, they were the image I had of God. I thought to myself, I didn't have any chance with God, because if the nuns were the representatives of God, and if they were so severe, how the more would God be? In the boarding school, there were lockers that were opened on Wednesdays and which held the packages sent by the parents and family. But we weren't allowed to owe anything, like chocolate or cookies. It wasn't allowed. We were only allowed to get what the boarding school would give us. Everything else was confiscated. We tried to hide things under a mattress or elsewhere, but it didn't work. And then it was Wednesday, and the lockers were opened, and in my locker there never was anything inside. Nobody sent anything to me. And the strange thing is that as a child, you don't lose hope. Each Wednesday, I would be there, hoping there was something for me. And there never was. And that was the first time I had a glimpse of the truth, realizing that all this had been done on purpose. The fact that I was at a border school, away from home, separate from a family, that nobody would visit me. In fact, I was set aside from my family, and there was a break in our relationship. Act 2, Above the Roofs of Paris. Eva-Maria was passionate. Her hair was all over. She was just like me, loud, laughing loud. After 6 months in Australia and Berlin starting to be small to me, I decided to go to Paris. I had a love-hate relationship to the French language, and then I went to the Sorbonne. There were young people from all over the world, countries like Greece, the Netherlands, Italy. And there was Eva-Maria. She didn't tell me right away she was in conflict with her parents. She didn't show it in any way. I didn't know about the burden she was carrying, and she didn't know about mine. She was astonished that I was such a joyful person. And so one day I briefly told her that Jesus was my friend. We were sitting in a cafe and I came to talk about it briefly. She went to the toilet, and when she came back she was quite irritated. So I asked her if I had done anything wrong. And she told me that she had kind of promised herself to never have any contact anymore with people who believed in God, who were Christians. At that moment I felt lost. I thought, oh my God, she's one of them. Since I left boarding school, I promised myself to never again sit at the same table as people pronouncing the word God or Bible. I didn't want to speak to these people ever again. And that's what I told her. I told her this subject was an absolute taboo, that I had experienced it and survived the subject, and that if she spoke once more about it, we wouldn't be friends anymore. I remember one of our conversations with Michaele. While we were watching over the roofs of Paris, I thought that if God really existed, it would be nice getting to know him better. I mean, if the God Michaele described to me really existed. And if he existed, it would definitely be great. And I thought, well, I might miss out something if it was true. I didn't pray or anything. It was just a secret wish that I sent in a silent voice over the roofs of Paris. And the next day I drove to Chartres to visit the cathedral and see the Gothic windows because they're very famous. As I entered the cathedral, there was an organ concert of Bach. I didn't like organ nor Bach. I just wanted to watch the windows. So I sat down, looked up to the windows with the music surrounding me. I saw the cross in front of me. And then something totally strange happened, something you can't put into words. It was as if I felt a huge presence, something I never experienced before. It wasn't all pleasant. Suddenly, I lost my breath. I realized there was something fundamental going on. Fundamental and overwhelming. So how do I get along with this? I was shocked, not happy. That's the strange thing. And I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do now? I heard about a preacher from New Zealand who was going to preach in a free church, which is far from the Catholic boarding school. And she came, and we went to this worship. And as it's often the case in these free churches, there was a call at the end. A call for the people who wanted to follow Jesus. and she did it. She walked to the front and let them pray for her. When I went to the front, I kneeled down. I didn't have huge expectations, but I thought, why not? I didn't have a great faith anyway. So I kneel, I listen to the prayer, and at one moment I feel a great burden getting up and being taken away. Suddenly I feel free. I am free. I can't explain it. I'm free from what I was, from my past, from being abandoned. I'm free. And at that moment, I feel it very clearly. And I also realized very clearly that I had started a totally new life. I felt I was starting it all over again, from the beginning. Act 3, the curtain rises. Something very important that came together with my conversion was that I asked myself what I really wanted to do with my life. As I had a Father in heaven, maybe I could ask him. In fact, I had always wanted to be an actress, so I asked him, if you want me to be an actress, then let it be at the National Drama School, which was, for me, the highest quality. I did the entrance examination. It takes a week. I was stunned when they told me I passed. You can't imagine it. I cried out of joy, but also fear. I thought, Lord, oh Lord, is this true? I can't do this. It's not me. The others are so much better than I am. The National Drama School in Vienna, the Max Reinhardt Seminar, was the school of great careers. It's the place where all the famous actors have been teaching. For example, Sami Morchio taught us pantomime, or Christian Herbigert was one of our teachers. All the best actors were there. It was the elite that explained us about our profession. All the time I studied there, I had the idea I would never get a job. From the second year on, it was possible to be allowed to start playing besides the studies, start acting. So I did that, and I have been acting all the time during my study. The director of the Burgtheater had seen me act, and that's why I got the opportunity to audition for this theater. But I was only one out of 200. So I auditioned, and then I had to audition again, and then we were only 10 left. And they said they would get in touch, but they didn't. So I thought, well, that's it. But just to make sure, I decided to call them. And when I called, they said, yes, you're already scheduled. You start in 2 weeks. So I said, well, nobody called me. And they answered, well, we were sure you'd get in touch with us. And that's how I started at the Burgtheater. Act 4, fencing lessons. I grew up in Switzerland, and looking for happiness, I moved to Vienna without much money. At the drama school, I told them I couldn't really afford my study, so they offered me to study during the day and to work at the application office in the evening. So I did the office work while studying, and one day a fresh and awesome young woman came in and asked for an application form. Of course, I tried to make the conversation last as long as possible, because I thought that if she was going to attend the drama school, my life would change dramatically. At the drama school, we had fencing lessons. These lessons were mixed. We wore a special suit, a mask, gloves, and it lasted for several months. During one of the lessons, I told her I wanted to talk to her afterwards. I was very serious, and we met after the fencing lesson. And I told her, Eva-Maria, I think I fell in love with you. I said it in a very reasonable manner, like in a dramatic play, and she answered in the same way, yes, well, we will have to talk that over. So we decided to have a cup of tea together to really talk it over, and indeed, during 2 hours, we have been speaking about all the different existing teas. Stupid things you do when you're in love. Then we had to leave, and I remember that after the tea, for the first time, in front of the Stefan Dome, a very romantic spot, I kissed her on her forehead to say goodbye.